In terms of the Eurozone crisis, I look at questions of economics to begin with, and what's wrong, what's not working with the Eurozone as a result of economic fundamentals. But I'm also interested in problems of leadership. Why is it that it took so long for the European leaders to respond? And that's actually an institutional question. It's about the rules that are essentially obstacles for action to the Eurozone leaders. But I'm also looking at Eurozone leaders' ideas and the kinds of policies they've implemented. And in particular, the austerity policy, which I see is not working at all. And that austerity policy has to do with a certain set of ideas that are largely German, ordo-liberal, which is basically neoliberalism with rules. And what this means is it's a focus on financial stability and structural reform, austerity, regardless of the consequences. And what we're seeing now are the consequences in that the economies, in particular Southern Europe, but also Northern Europe, are now in decline. They're moving into recession. Some economies are in Great Depression. One of the problems in terms of EU decision-making has to do with what's happened to national democracy as a result, national representative democracy as a result of the EU becoming more and more important as a result of more and more policies being made and decisions being made at the EU level rather than the national. In my 2006 book on democracy in Europe, I talk about the fact that at the EU level you have something that I call policy without politics, and at the national level, politics without policy. What this means is that issues that were political issues that were debated at the national level in the past, in particular economic decisions, have now been taken up to the EU level, essentially eliminating from the national level those things that had been the subject of tremendous debate. At the same time that they're taken up to the EU level and they're no longer the subject of left-right debate. Rather, they're seen as policy without politics. They're discussed more technocratically, or in the European Council, which is the executive body of the EU made up of the member state leaders. These issues are discussed in terms of national interest. If they're discussed in the European Parliament, they're discussed in terms of public interest. And if they're discussed in the Commission, which is the bureaucratic arm of the EU, it's about pluralist politics, really, organized interests. The result is that national citizens don't understand what goes on at the EU level because they don't see the regular left-right debates of politics, and they're actually given no choice. They're presented with EU decisions as if these are apolitical and technocratic. But in fact, they're very political decisions. Even though this is policy without politics, these are actually very political.